I'm a 34-year-old woman who's been married for just over 2 years. My husband comes from an old money family, think legacy, pedigree, country clubs, private schools, and lake houses. It's a different world from the one I grew up in. I was raised in a working-class neighborhood, where fixing a flat tire and saving leftovers was normal. When I was 15, I made a mistake. I shoplifted something small from a convenience store. I got caught, ended up with a juvenile record, and spent the next decade working hard to make sure that one poor decision didn't define me. I turned things around, graduated high school with top grades, earned a degree in computer science, climbed the ladder in the tech world, took a few calculated risks, and eventually started my own company. It took years, but it paid off. Today, I lead a talented team, and we work on projects that make a real difference. You'd think that would be enough to move past a teenage mistake, especially since I've always been open about it. My husband knew before we got serious. He never judged me for it. But his family saw it differently. They treated it like an inside joke, something they could bring up for a laugh. The first time was subtle. At a family dinner a few months before our wedding, his dad raised his glass and joked about keeping valuables locked away. It didn't get much of a laugh, but I let it slide. I thought it was a one-time thing. But his mom began calling me the comeback kid at every family gathering, smiling just enough to pretend it was a compliment. I tried to blend in. I helped where I could. I got his brother a referral at a startup I knew, and I built a website for his sister's candle business for free. Still, nothing changed. The jokes kept coming. At a neighborhood barbecue, his brother handed me a plastic fork and said, "Just in case anything goes missing." Some laughed, but others looked at me differently, as if the joke might be true. That night, I asked my husband to step in. He admitted the jokes bothered him too, but said he felt stuck. I wanted to trust him. But then I learned they had brought up my juvenile record at his bachelor party. They laughed about how he'd tamed the wild one. I wasn't even there, but one of his friends quietly told me. They acted like I should be thankful they'd accepted someone like me. At that point, I gave up on them ever changing. I didn't argue or cause a scene. I paid attention. I started researching, not to start a fight, but to protect myself. I checked public records, called in a favor from a background investigator, and made a few discreet calls. What I found shocked me. His uncle had a sealed DUI case involving a drone incident. His father had been linked to a tax investigation that conveniently disappeared. His cousin had been expelled from college for cheating, though they claimed she left to follow her dreams. I kept it all to myself. I filed it neatly in a folder and locked it away. Even my husband didn't know. I didn't want to involve him unless I had no other choice. But I wasn't going to stand by quietly if they kept using my past for laughs. Then came the baby shower. It was for our first child, held at our home. We kept it modest. My parents, close friends, and his family were all there. His family arrived early with lavish gifts and cheerful smiles. His dad stood to make a toast. I hoped he'd be respectful, but instead, he said, "It's amazing what someone can do after juvenile hall." People chuckled like it was harmless, but this time, my parents, friends, and coworkers were in the room. That was the moment I knew I had to draw a line, not for revenge, not to cause a scene, but to finally put a stop to it. I wasn't that 15-year-old anymore. I'd worked too hard to keep being the punchline of their family jokes. I had cleaned the backyard, added extra seating, and ordered pastries from a local bakery. My husband took care of the decorations and made sure both families were included. His family came early with over-the-top gifts. Everything looked generous, but soon enough, the old habits returned. His father, loud enough for nearby guests, repeated the juvenile hall joke again. A few people glanced at each other. My husband said nothing. He gave a weak smile and served drinks. Later, when we were alone, he apologized. He mentioned his father's health issues, said confrontation would only make things worse. It wasn't the first time he dismissed it as just his dad's sense of humor. I didn't argue. I nodded and returned to the party. While giving some guests a tour, I saw his sister lingering in my home office. The space had some framed medals, a plaque with my company logo, and launch event photos. She stood by the desk, holding her phone. When I asked if she needed anything, she said she was just admiring the room. I let it go. That night, after everyone had left, I got a message from a friend. It was a screenshot of a social media post. His sister had shared a photo from my office with the caption, "From thief to CEO, only in America." No names, no tags, but everyone familiar with our story would know who it was about. I showed my husband. He told me to breathe, said she didn't mean any harm, and brought up his mother's blood pressure and his father's insomnia again. I told him I wasn't asking for permission anymore. This wasn't a joke, it was humiliation disguised as humor. And if they kept dragging my name, I'd return the favor, not with lies, but with truth. A few days later, we went to brunch at his parents' place. We brought our baby, dressed in a blue onesie with matching booties. Everyone was out in the garden, fussing over the baby. His mother handed me a plate and joked, "Hope he doesn't inherit those sticky fingers." More laughter. I didn't laugh. I stood up, placed my plate down, and asked if we were really going to keep doing this. I looked around and said if we were going to joke about family history, let's include everything. I brought up his dad's quiet tax issues, the uncle's DUI and drone incident, the cousin's expulsion masked as a passion project. The jokes stopped. I didn't raise my voice. I calmly pulled the folder from the diaper bag and placed it on the table. The tabs were labeled. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. They knew. His father stood, face flushed. His mother slammed her napkin down. Some guests left. Others stared at their plates. No one said another word to me. I picked up our child, looked at my husband, and we walked out together. No shouting. No farewells. Just silence. That night, we sat in the nursery, rocking our son to sleep. My husband didn't defend his family. We agreed we needed space. No more dinners, visits, or invitations, at least until we figured out what peace looked like for us. Only one person replied. An uncle. He responded with a caustic message, calling me vindictive, classless, and a threat to family unity. He said that people like me always find a way to tear down what others have built, that I'd climbed the ladder only to light it on fire behind me. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. He said everything I already knew they thought of me. That night, my husband read the message aloud. Then he deleted the entire family email chain, blocked his uncle, and said quietly, "This is not our family anymore." We didn't speak much after that. We didn't have to. A line had been drawn. The next few weeks were calmer. We refocused on work, parenting, and rebuilding trust, between us, not with them. I set clear digital boundaries. My company's page was made private. Our personal accounts were scrubbed, and our baby's photos were removed from public view. We told the daycare to keep strict records of any inquiries. We even started the process of drafting wills and guardianship instructions, making sure our son would never end up under the care of anyone who treated us like a problem to be silenced. My therapist asked me a hard question during one of our solo sessions. "What do you want from all this now?" I didn't hesitate. Peace, stability, safety for my child. It was never about revenge. It was about drawing a clear, permanent boundary between us and people who believed their cruelty was tradition and their silence was power. I had spent years waiting for them to treat me like an equal. Now I didn't care if they ever did. What mattered was that I no longer needed their approval, and that they knew it. Some bridges don't need to be burned. Some bridges should never have been built in the first place. Last month we received a formal envelope in the mail with an address I didn't recognize at first. It was crisp, heavy with official markings, and sealed carefully. Inside was an invitation, elegant cardstock, gilded edges, and cursive fonts. It was for a family reunion hosted by one of my husband's uncles, scheduled to take place at a countryside estate the family used to frequent. No mention of the past. No note. No apology. Just an RSVP card and a printed itinerary. My husband read it once and set it on the counter. I asked if he wanted to respond. He said no. He had nothing left to say to people who hadn't changed but hoped time alone would erase accountability. We didn't go. Instead, we spent that weekend hiking with our son. We packed snacks, took photos, and laughed over little things. It wasn't grand, but it was ours. No scripts. No performance. Just peace. In the years since, no one from the reunion ever followed up. The silence didn't hurt. It clarified. We had spent too long treating discomfort as a price for connection. We no longer do. Our child knows kindness. He knows safety. He knows love that doesn't require silence in exchange. And that's all we ever wanted. Not revenge. Not drama. Just a home that feels like home. And now we have it. We didn't know what to expect. Inside the envelope was an invitation to my husband's grandfather's 75th birthday party. At the bottom was a handwritten note that read, "No strings attached. Just family." My husband stared at it for a long time before placing it on the counter. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think we've been here before," I said. That night, we talked. Not out of anger or fear, but with clarity and understanding. We discussed what it would mean to walk back into that house again, what message it might send to our son, who was now old enough to remember faces, sense tension, and pick up on all the unspoken things we once tried to ignore. 2 days later, my husband's cousin, the one who had moved away, called. He had received the same invitation. He told us his parents had divorced last year, and that things had shifted in the family. His dad, who had once been one of the harshest toward me, had a recent health scare. Apparently, it changed his outlook. The cousin wasn't making excuses, just giving us context. "Are you going?" I asked. "Only if you two are," he said. "And only if we go in together." So we sent a response, not a yes or a no, but a condition. My husband wrote a short note saying we'd consider attending if his father was willing to meet us privately first. We proposed a coffee shop downtown. Neutral ground. To our surprise, his father agreed. When we arrived, he was already sitting there. He looked smaller, older, not just in years, but in spirit. When we approached, he stood awkwardly and extended his hand, to me, not his son. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice softer than I'd ever heard. The conversation wasn't dramatic. There were no tears, no big monologues. Just quiet words. He spoke of regrets, of realizing too late what he'd lost. He mentioned getting treatment for the first time. Therapy. He talked about how he'd blindly followed patterns he inherited from his father, until it cost him his own child. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said finally. "Just a chance to know my grandson before it's too late." My husband and I had already discussed our boundaries before we arrived. "We'll attend the birthday," I said. 2 hours, no more. Our son stays with us at all times. One joke, one comment about the past, and we leave for good. He nodded and then slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a formal letter of apology, sent to everyone who had witnessed the brunch disaster 3 years earlier. "It won't undo anything," he said. "But it's the truth. We went to the birthday party that weekend. It wasn't perfect. Some family members were stiffly polite. Others were genuinely kind. His mother hugged my husband for too long, then offered me a careful, tentative handshake. His sister kept her distance until our son walked up to her, fascinated by her earrings. As we were leaving, his grandfather, the same man who had spoken up for us on that video call years ago, took my hand. "You know," he said softly, "sometimes a family needs to break before it can heal properly." I didn't tell him we weren't really coming back. That one nice afternoon couldn't erase years of mistreatment. That we were still being cautious, still watching. Instead, I just nodded. On the drive home, our son fell asleep in his car seat, holding a small wooden puzzle box his grandfather had given him. "Are we doing the right thing?" my husband asked, eyes on the road. I looked at our son. Then at the man beside me, the man who had finally learned how to stand steady. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I do know we're doing it right. On our terms. With our boundaries. And that's something." We didn't fully rejoin the family after that day. Instead, we stayed deliberate and limited in our presence. Occasional lunches in public. Short visits with clear expectations. Holiday cards with professional photos, but no personal updates. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't forgiveness. It was coexistence, under strict conditions. My company continued to grow. I published my children's book, this time, under my real name. The folder of screenshots and old messages stayed tucked away, not forgotten, just no longer needed. We built our lives around people who saw us, friends who became family, neighbors who showed up without an agenda, colleagues who respected boundaries. We didn't have to burn bridges to find peace. We just had to stop crossing the ones that led us nowhere. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family stories, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you never miss what comes next.